Lisa Martinez walked across the training ground carrying her Barrett rifle. The weapon felt heavy in her hands, but she knew it like an old friend. She had carried this same rifle through 3 tours of duty and countless missions. Now she was on an alien planet called Kepler 442b, standing among soldiers from 12 different species who all thought humans were weak. The alien soldiers looked at her rifle and started laughing. Some made clicking sounds that their translators turned into mocking comments. Others just stared at the old weapon like it was a museum piece that belonged in a display case instead of a battlefield. "Look at that ancient thing," said Zektar, a creature that looked like a giant praying mantis with 4 arms. His voice came through a small device that changed his alien speech into English. "Does the human really think that old chemical weapon can compete with our plasma rifles?" Velana was tall and graceful with pale blue skin and large eyes. Her people were famous throughout the galaxy for being excellent shooters. She looked at Lisa with what might have been pity. "Perhaps the human should watch first and learn how real weapons work. Our plasma rifles can hit targets at 5,000 meters with perfect accuracy every time." More aliens gathered around to see what was happening. There were rock-skinned Carillions who stood 8 feet tall and looked like walking mountains. Scaly Draconians growled and showed their sharp teeth when they smiled. Spider-like arachnoids moved on 8 legs and watched everything with multiple eyes. All of them had weapons that looked like they came from science fiction movies. Jake Sullivan stood nearby watching the whole scene. He was the human commander on this base and he felt embarrassed. The Galactic Defense Coalition had invited Earth to send soldiers to train with their advanced military. Most of the alien species thought humans were too primitive to be useful in modern warfare. Today was supposed to prove them wrong, but it was starting to look like it would prove them right. "Martinez, you don't have to do this," said Captain Ryan Foster as he walked up to Lisa. "Half these aliens already think we're a joke anyway." Lisa checked her rifle scope and made sure her ammunition was ready. "Sir, with respect, let them laugh all they want. I didn't travel this far across the galaxy just to back down now." The shooting range stretched out in front of them for several kilometers. Targets were placed at different distances, with the farthest ones being tiny dots that were barely visible, even with good binoculars. The alien weapons could hit those distant targets easily because they had computer systems that did all the aiming automatically. Admiral Thurvok was in charge of the training exercise. He was a Carillion whose people had invented some of the most deadly weapons in known space. His stone-like face showed no emotion as he spoke through his translator. "We will begin with targets at 1,000 meters. Each soldier gets 3 shots. The alien soldiers went first. Their plasma rifles made bright streaks of light as the energy bolts flew downrange. Each shot hit the center of the target perfectly. The weapons had targeting computers that calculated wind speed, distance, and atmospheric pressure automatically. The soldiers barely had to aim at all. See how easy it is when you have proper technology," said Crix, a Draconian whose scales were dark green and whose eyes glowed red. "Primitive kinetic weapons like yours are unpredictable and inaccurate." When Lisa's turn came, she walked to the firing line. Her Barrett rifle looked huge and clumsy compared to the sleek alien weapons. She lay down in a shooting position and looked through her scope. Unlike the aliens, she had to calculate everything herself. She felt the wind on her face and estimated its speed. She looked at grass moving in the distance to see how the wind changed at different ranges. She even noticed small temperature differences in the air that would affect her bullet's path. The aliens watched her take so much time, and some of them laughed again. Their weapons didn't need all this preparation. They just pointed and shot, and the computers did everything else. Lisa took her first shot. The bullet flew downrange and struck the exact center of the target. The alien stopped laughing and looked surprised. "Lucky shot," muttered Crix. "Chemical weapons are too random to be consistent." Lisa fired her second shot. It hit almost exactly where the first bullet had gone. The third shot created a tiny triangle with the other 2 bullets right in the center of the target. Admiral Thurvok looked at the target display on his computer screen. "Acceptable accuracy for primitive technology," he said, but his voice sounded less certain than before. "We will now move to 1,500 meters. Amy Chen was one of the few other humans on the base. She watched Lisa through binoculars and whispered to Captain Foster. "How is she doing that? Even our best snipers back on Earth rarely shoot at targets past 1,500 meters. Foster had seen Lisa shoot many times before, but never like this. She's not just shooting, he realized. She's reading the environment. Look how she's watching that thermal vent 200 meters left of the target. It's creating air currents that the alien computers aren't detecting. As the distances got longer, some of the alien soldiers started missing their targets. Their computers were very advanced, but they were programmed for normal conditions. The atmosphere on this planet was different from what they were used to. There were temperature changes and air currents that confused their targeting systems. Lisa kept hitting her targets. Each shot was carefully calculated using knowledge she had gained from years of experience. She understood how bullets behaved in different conditions because she had learned through thousands of hours of practice. The aliens had never needed to learn these skills because their computers always did the work for them. The crowd of watchers grew quieter as more aliens came to see what was happening. Word was spreading through the base that a human with an ancient weapon was matching the performance of their most advanced military technology. Some aliens looked confused. Others looked angry. A few looked impressed. Commander Sullivan found himself holding his breath as he watched Lisa prepare for the next shot. Maybe humans weren't as primitive as everyone thought. Maybe there were some things that experience and skill could do that computers couldn't. Maybe this human woman with her old rifle was about to teach the entire galaxy something important about what it meant to be a warrior. The shooting competition was designed to show off the best weapons in the galaxy. Targets were placed at many different distances across the range. The closest ones were at 500 meters, which was considered easy for any decent soldier. The middle targets were at 2,000 meters, which required good equipment and some skill. The farthest targets were at 4,000 meters, which was supposed to be impossible for anything except the most advanced plasma weapons with computer assistance. Admiral Thurvok explained the rules to everyone. Each round will test accuracy at greater distances. Soldiers who miss their targets will be eliminated from the competition. We start with 1,000 meters and work our way up to the maximum range. The alien contestants lined up with confidence. They had trained with these weapons for years, and their targeting computers could calculate bullet drop, wind drift, and atmospheric pressure in milliseconds. Most of them had never missed a shot at these distances when using their standard military equipment. Zektar went first with his forearm shooting stance. His plasma rifle was sleek and black with glowing blue displays that showed targeting information. He aimed at the 1,000-meter target and fired 3 shots in quick succession. Each plasma bolt streaked across the range like a small bolt of lightning. All 3 shots hit within a few centimeters of each other right in the center of the target. The crowd of aliens made appreciative sounds. Plasma weapons were clean and efficient. They didn't create smoke or noise like the primitive chemical weapons that humans used. They were also much more accurate because they weren't affected by wind or gravity, the same way that physical bullets were. Velana took her turn next. Her weapon was even more advanced than Zektar's. It had targeting sensors that could track moving objects and predict where they would be when the plasma bolt arrived. She fired 3 perfect shots that created a pattern so tight it looked like one larger hole in the target. "Beautiful shooting," commented Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who was watching from the observation area. She was the human scientific advisor on the base, and she understood how the alien technology worked. Their weapons compensate for every variable automatically. One by one, the other alien soldiers took their turns. Crix the Draconian used a heavy plasma cannon that could probably punch through tank armor. His shots were perfect. A crystalline silicoid used an energy weapon that fired pure light beams. Perfect accuracy. Even the spider-like arachnoids with their multiple arms and complex weapons hit their targets with no difficulty. When Lisa's turn came, she approached the firing line with her Barrett rifle. The weapon looked massive compared to the alien rifles, but it also looked crude and mechanical. Instead of glowing displays and targeting computers, it had simple glass lenses and metal adjustments that had to be set by hand. Lisa lay down behind her rifle and looked through the scope. She could see the target clearly, but she also had to see everything between her and the target. She watched grass moving in the wind at different distances. She felt the temperature of the air on her skin. She even noticed that the gravity on this planet was slightly different from Earth, which would affect how her bullets flew. The aliens watched her take several minutes to prepare for her first shot. Their weapons could acquire targets and fire in seconds. They didn't understand why she needed so much time. "Is the human having equipment problems?" asked one of the Carillions. "No," said Captain Foster. "She's reading the environment. Human snipers have to understand everything that can affect their shot, because we don't have computers to do it for us." Lisa fired her first shot. The Barrett rifle made a loud crack that echoed across the range. A small cloud of smoke appeared from the muzzle. The bullet took almost 2 seconds to reach the target at 1,000 meters. When it hit, it struck the exact center. Her second shot hit right next to the first one. The third shot completed a tiny triangle that could be covered by a coin. The aliens looked surprised. They had expected the primitive weapon to be inaccurate and inconsistent. Good grouping for kinetic projectiles, admitted Admiral Thurvok. We proceed to 1,500 meters. At 1,500 meters, the alien weapons continued to perform perfectly. Their targeting computers adjusted for the increased distance automatically. The soldiers barely had to change their aiming technique. Lisa had to make major adjustments to her scope. She also had to calculate how much her bullet would drop due to gravity over the longer distance. Wind became a much bigger factor, too. A gentle breeze that barely affected shorter shots could push a bullet several inches off target at 1,500 meters. She took even more time to study the conditions. She watched dust blowing across the range to see wind patterns. She looked at heat waves rising from different areas to understand temperature changes. She even noticed that one of the alien vehicles parked near the range was creating air currents that could affect her shot. When she fired, her first shot hit the center of the target. The second shot hit almost exactly the same spot. The third shot opened up the group slightly but still stayed within the center ring. Some of the aliens began to look less amused. A few started examining their own equipment displays more carefully. They had assumed that primitive technology would fail quickly as the distances increased. Amy Chen watched through binoculars and shook her head in amazement. She's shooting better here than she ever did back on Earth. Different planet, different conditions, explained Captain Foster. But she's adapting to them faster than their computers are. At 2,000 meters, several alien contestants began to show small errors in their shooting. The targeting computers were very sophisticated, but they were programmed based on data from their home planets. The atmospheric conditions on Kepler 442b were different enough to cause minor calculation errors. Lisa continued to hit her targets consistently. She had learned to read alien weather patterns and atmospheric conditions during her weeks of training on the base. Her experience shooting in dozens of different environments on Earth had taught her how to adapt quickly to new conditions. The crowd around the range had grown larger. Word was spreading that something unusual was happening. Aliens from many different species came to watch the human with the ancient weapon compete against their most advanced military technology. Admiral Thurvok announced the next distance. 2,500 meters. This is approaching the maximum effective range for most weapons. The aliens began to look more serious. At this distance, even their advanced targeting systems would be challenged. Several contestants had already been eliminated for missing targets. Only the best shooters from each species remained in the competition. Lisa checked her rifle and prepared for the longest shot she had ever attempted on an alien world. She knew that every small error would be magnified at this distance. The slightest mistake in reading wind or atmospheric pressure could cause her to miss the target completely. But she also knew that her human training had prepared her for this moment. While the aliens relied on their computers, she relied on skills that had been developed through thousands of years of human warfare. She had something that no computer could replicate: intuition based on experience. Admiral Thurvok stood at the range control station and looked at the display showing the 3,200-meter target. At this distance, the target appeared as a tiny dot even through the most powerful viewing equipment. Most of the alien weapons had never been tested at such extreme range. Final elimination round, the Admiral announced through his translator. Targets at 3,200 meters. Maximum difficulty level. Only 3 alien contestants remained along with Lisa. The others had been eliminated as their weapons reached the limits of effective range. The surviving competitors included Velana with her natural shooting talent, Draktor the Corellian with his military experience, and Zexmai, a silicoid whose crystalline structure gave him perfect mathematical processing abilities. Commander Sullivan watched nervously from the observation area. The competition had gone far beyond what anyone expected. What started as a simple training exercise had become a test of the fundamental limits of military technology. If Lisa failed now, it would confirm what most aliens believed about human capabilities. Velana went first. Her plasma rifle was the most advanced weapon remaining in the competition. It had targeting computers that could process millions of calculations per second. But even her sophisticated equipment struggled with the extreme distance. She fired 3 shots carefully, taking time between each one to let her targeting system recalculate. The first plasma bolt flew downrange and missed the target completely. The second shot hit the outer edge of the target area. The third shot missed again as atmospheric interference confused her targeting sensors. Acceptable performance considering the range limitations, Admiral Thurvok commented diplomatically. Draktor the Carillion stepped up next. His massive plasma rifle was designed for battlefield use rather than precision shooting. At 3,200 meters, he was asking it to perform beyond its design specifications. His first shot went wide. The second shot hit closer to the target but still missed the center by a large margin. His third shot was the best, striking near the outer ring of the target. Atmospheric density variations are too extreme at this distance, he reported. Targeting computers cannot compensate effectively. Zexamai approached the firing line with confidence. His crystalline body could process mathematical calculations faster than most computers. His species had developed targeting technology that was considered the most accurate in the galaxy, but even his advanced equipment failed at the extreme distance. 2 of his 3 shots missed the target completely. The third shot barely clipped the edge of the target area. Impossible range for energy weapons, he concluded. Atmospheric dispersion makes accurate targeting impractical. The alien spectators murmured among themselves in various languages. Their most advanced technology had reached its limits. Even the best marksmen, from the most sophisticated species, couldn't achieve consistent accuracy at 3,200 meters. Now it was Lisa's turn. She approached the firing line carrying her Barrett rifle with the same calm confidence she had shown throughout the competition, but Captain Foster could see the tension in her movements. This was farther than any human had ever attempted to shoot on an alien world. Lisa settled into her shooting position and looked through her scope. The target was so far away that it was barely visible even at maximum magnification. At this distance, her bullet would take over 5 seconds to reach the target. During that time, countless variables could affect its flight path. She began her environmental analysis with even greater care than before. She studied wind patterns at multiple altitudes by watching dust, grass, and leaves at different distances. She felt temperature variations on her skin that indicated air density changes. She even observed the behavior of flying creatures to understand atmospheric currents. "What is she doing?" asked Zektar, who had been eliminated earlier but stayed to watch the final rounds. "She's reading the environment like a book," explained Dr. Rodriguez. Human snipers develop an almost supernatural ability to sense atmospheric conditions. They can detect changes that even our most sensitive instruments miss. Lisa spent over 15 minutes studying the conditions. She calculated bullet drop, wind drift, atmospheric pressure, even the slight gravitational variations caused by the planet's 2 moons. She factored in the rotation of the planet and the thermal effects from the alien base's power systems. The aliens watched with growing fascination. Their targeting computers could process data much faster than any biological brain, but they were beginning to understand that Lisa was using a completely different approach. Instead of calculating what should happen, she was sensing what would actually happen. She made final adjustments to her scope settings. The Barrett rifle had been designed for long-range shooting, but even it had limitations. At 3,200 meters, she was pushing the weapon beyond what its manufacturers ever intended. Lisa controlled her breathing until her heart rate dropped to its minimum. She entered a state of complete focus where everything except the shot disappeared from her consciousness. Her finger found the trigger and applied steady pressure. The rifle fired with its characteristic boom. The bullet left the muzzle at over 800 meters per second, but even at that velocity, it would take more than 5 seconds to cover the distance to the target. During those 5 seconds, the bullet fought against gravity that tried to pull it down. Wind currents pushed it from side to side. Changes in air density affected its stability. Temperature variations altered its trajectory slightly. Even the planet's magnetic field had a tiny influence on its path. The aliens watched the target display screens as sophisticated sensors tracked the bullet's flight. Computer models showed its predicted impact point changing constantly as it encountered different atmospheric conditions. For what seemed like an eternity, the bullet flew through the alien atmosphere. It passed through thermal layers and wind shears that no targeting computer had been able to predict. It traveled farther than any human-fired projectile had ever gone on this world. Then it struck the target. The impact sensors registered a perfect center hit. The bullet had found its mark with an accuracy that seemed impossible for a kinetic projectile at such extreme range. The observation area fell completely silent. Hundreds of aliens from dozens of species stared at the target display in disbelief. The human with the primitive weapon had achieved something that their most advanced military technology couldn't match. Admiral Thurvok checked and rechecked his instruments. The readings were correct. The shot had been perfect, impossible, whispered Velana. No kinetic weapon should be accurate at such range. The mathematical probability of success was less than 0.01%, added Zexmai, his crystalline structure flickering with confusion. Lisa stood up and began the familiar routine of making her rifle safe. She ejected the spent cartridge case and engaged the safety. To her, it had been just another shot, albeit a very difficult one. Captain Foster stared at her in amazement. "Martinez, how did you know you could make that shot?" Lisa looked at him with a slight smile. "Sir, I've been making impossible shots my whole career. The only difference today was that finally, someone was paying attention." The aliens began to gather around Lisa with expressions of respect and curiosity. What they had witnessed challenged everything they thought they knew about primitive technology and human capabilities. The woman with the Barrett rifle had just rewritten their understanding of what was possible in military marksmanship. At 2,500 meters, the shooting became much more difficult. Even the alien weapons with their advanced targeting computers started showing problems. The distance was so great that small errors in calculation became big misses on the target. Zektar went first with his four-armed stance. His plasma rifle hummed as the targeting computer worked to calculate the shot. The first plasma bolt flew downrange and hit near the edge of the target instead of the center. His second shot was better, but still not perfect. The third shot missed the target completely. "Atmospheric interference," he explained to the other aliens. "The targeting system is having trouble with the air density variations on this planet." Velana had similar problems. Her elegant weapon fired 3 shots, but only 2 hit the target. The plasma bolts were being affected by air currents that the targeting computers couldn't predict accurately. "How can the computers be wrong?" asked one of the younger alien soldiers. "They calculate every variable." Dr. Rodriguez overheard the question and answered. "The computers calculate based on programmed data. But every planet has unique atmospheric conditions. Your systems are designed for your home worlds, not for this place." One by one, the alien contestants took their turns. About half of them missed at least 1 shot. The Carillion soldier fired 3 times and only hit the target once. A silicoid with perfect mathematical processing abilities missed twice. Even the confident Draconian named Crix had trouble with his heavy plasma cannon. When Lisa's turn came, she spent even more time studying the environment. At 2,500 meters, she had to account for many more variables. The bullet would take over 3 seconds to reach the target. During that time, wind could push it several feet off course. Gravity would pull it down significantly. Even small changes in air temperature could affect its path. She watched a dust devil spinning in the distance and calculated how it might affect air currents near her target. She noticed that the alien base's power generators were creating heat that rose into the air and created invisible turbulence. She even factored in the position of the planet's 2 small moons, which affected the local gravity field slightly. The aliens watched her preparation with growing interest. Their weapons didn't require this kind of environmental analysis. They were beginning to understand that human shooting was as much art as science. Lisa fired her first shot. The Barrett rifle's boom echoed across the range. The bullet flew through varying air densities and changing wind currents. It struck the center of the target. Her second shot hit just millimeters away from the first. The third shot created a group so tight that all 3 bullet holes overlapped. Admiral Thurvok studied his display screen for a long time before speaking. "Remarkable consistency for kinetic projectiles at extreme range." Captain Foster watched Lisa through his binoculars and realized something important. "She's not just calculating the shot," he told the other humans. "She's feeling it. Look at how she reads the wind patterns. She's using instincts that no computer can replicate." The competition moved to 3,000 meters. At this distance, only 6 contestants remained. 3 aliens had been eliminated at the previous range. The remaining shooters included the best marksmen from the most advanced species in the galaxy. 3,000 meters was considered the practical limit for most plasma weapons. Even with computer assistance, the targeting systems struggled to maintain accuracy at such extreme range. The energy bolts had to travel through kilometers of atmosphere that could deflect them in unpredictable ways. The first alien to shoot was a Carillion named Draktor, whose people were famous for their military prowess. His massive stone-like hands held a plasma rifle that looked tiny in his grip. He fired 3 shots, but only one hit the target. The others went wide as his targeting computer failed to compensate for atmospheric disturbance. Velana tried next. Her graceful movements and natural shooting ability had made her species legends throughout the galaxy, but even she struggled at this distance. 2 of her 3 shots hit the target, but both were far from the center. Crix the Draconian growled in frustration as all 3 of his shots missed completely. His heavy plasma cannon was designed for shorter-range combat. At 3,000 meters, it couldn't maintain the precision needed for accurate shooting. "The atmospheric conditions are too variable," complained one of the remaining aliens. "Our targeting systems cannot compensate for all the unknown factors." Amy Chen watched the alien shooters struggle and felt a growing sense of pride. Their computers are giving up, but Lisa is just getting started. When Lisa's turn came, she took longer than ever to prepare. 3,000 meters was farther than she had ever shot on Earth. The Barrett rifle was being pushed to its absolute limits. At this distance, the bullet would drop over 30 meters due to gravity alone. Wind drift could move it several meters left or right. Even the rotation of the planet would affect its flight path slightly. She studied the target through her scope until she could see every detail. She watched grass and leaves moving at different distances to map the wind patterns. She felt temperature changes on her face that told her about air density variations. She even listened to the sounds around her because audio could reveal information about atmospheric conditions. The aliens watched in fascination as she made tiny adjustments to her scope. They were beginning to understand that human marksmanship was completely different from their computer-assisted shooting. Instead of relying on programmed calculations, she was using biological sensors and learned instincts to read the environment. Lisa fired her first shot. The bullet took over 4 seconds to reach the target. During that time, it fought against gravity, wind, and atmospheric pressure. When it finally struck, it hit within inches of the center. Her second shot landed even closer to the bullseye. The third shot created a group that any human sniper would be proud of, especially at such an extreme distance. The remaining alien contestants looked at each other with expressions of confusion and growing respect. Their most advanced military technology was being outperformed by a human, using equipment that most of them considered obsolete. Admiral Thurvok announced the final challenge. Maximum range, 3,200 meters. At this distance, only the most sophisticated targeting systems have any hope of accuracy. The aliens knew that this was beyond the effective range of most of their weapons. They had never expected the competition to reach such extreme distances. But the human had somehow forced them to push their technology to its absolute limits. Lisa looked downrange at the distant target that was barely visible even through her powerful scope. 3,200 meters was farther than she had ever attempted to shoot. It was beyond what most people considered possible for a chemical projectile weapon, but she had come this far and she wasn't going to back down now. The entire galaxy was watching to see what humans could accomplish. This was her chance to prove that sometimes experience and skill could triumph over advanced technology. Admiral Thurvok studied the competition results on his display screen for several minutes. The massive Carillion seemed to be having trouble accepting what had happened. His species had developed some of the most sophisticated targeting technology in the galaxy, yet a human with primitive equipment had outperformed it all. "Fascinating," he rumbled through his translator. "But surely there are limits to this intuitive targeting capability. No biological system can be superior to advanced computational analysis in all situations." Commander Sullivan sensed an opportunity to further demonstrate human capabilities. He checked his datapad and found additional information about Lisa's military record. "Actually, Admiral, there's something else you should know about Sergeant Martinez." "Continue." "She doesn't just hold the record for longest confirmed kill. She holds the top 5 longest confirmed kills in human military history. Her shortest record shot was 2,800 meters. Her longest was 3,200 meters, which she achieved 3 different times in combat situations." The assembled aliens began talking among themselves in their native languages. Translation devices picked up fragments of amazement, disbelief, and growing curiosity about human military capabilities. Crix the Draconian stepped forward aggressively. His scales had darkened to almost black, which indicated high emotional stress in his species. I challenge this claim. No kinetic projectile weapon could achieve such accuracy repeatedly at extreme range. These alleged records must be fabricated. Lisa looked at Commander Sullivan, who nodded slightly. She understood that more than just her personal reputation was at stake. The entire human military presence in the coalition was being judged based on her performance. "Sir," she said formally, "if the Admiral would permit it, there are targets at 3,200 meters on this range. I could demonstrate the repeatability of human marksmanship techniques." Admiral Thurvok's stone-like features showed what might have been surprise. His people were known for their logical approach to problem-solving, and he was clearly intrigued by the scientific implications of Lisa's claim. "You would attempt to recreate this alleged record shot, under observation by coalition military scientists?" "Not alleged, sir. Confirmed by multiple independent sources. And yes, I would be honored to demonstrate human capabilities for our coalition allies." The crowd of spectators began murmuring excitedly. What had started as a routine training exercise was becoming something unprecedented. A human was claiming she could repeatedly outperform galactic military technology, using equipment that most species considered obsolete. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward with scientific enthusiasm. "Admiral, if you'll permit me to set up additional monitoring equipment, we could gather comprehensive data on human marksmanship techniques. This could be valuable for coalition military research." "Granted. Establish full sensor coverage of the target area." As Dr. Rodriguez began coordinating with alien technicians to set up advanced monitoring systems, more aliens arrived to witness the demonstration. Word had spread throughout the base that something extraordinary was happening at the shooting range. Amy Chen watched the growing crowd with amazement. "I count representatives from at least 20 different species. This has turned into a major diplomatic event." Captain Foster nodded. "The entire galaxy is about to learn something important about human capabilities." "No pressure, Martinez." Lisa was already preparing for the next shot. She had fired one perfect shot at 3,200 meters, but now she needed to prove it wasn't just luck. She needed to show that human training and experience could consistently achieve results that alien technology couldn't match. The alien scientists finished setting up their monitoring equipment. Advanced sensors would track every aspect of the shot from the moment the bullet left the rifle until it struck the target. Atmospheric analyzers would measure wind speed, temperature, pressure, and humidity at multiple altitudes. Gravitational sensors would detect the influence of the planet's moons and any local variations in the gravitational field. "All monitoring systems are active," reported Dr. Rodriguez. "We'll have complete data on every variable that affects the shot." Admiral Thurvok addressed the crowd formally. "We will now observe a demonstration of human long-range marksmanship capabilities. Sergeant Martinez will attempt to achieve accuracy at 3,200 meters using kinetic projectile technology." Lisa approached the firing line with the same calm confidence she had shown throughout the competition. But the stakes were higher now. She wasn't just competing against alien soldiers anymore. She was representing all of humanity before the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. She settled into her shooting position and began her environmental analysis. The conditions had changed slightly since her previous shot. The wind had shifted direction and increased in speed. Cloud cover had moved in, creating different temperature patterns. Even the position of the planet's moons had changed enough to slightly alter the local gravitational field. "Observe how she analyzes the environment," Dr. Rodriguez explained to the alien scientists. "Human snipers develop sensitivity to atmospheric conditions that exceeds most mechanical sensors." Lisa spent 20 minutes studying the conditions. She watched grass and leaves at different distances to map wind patterns. She felt temperature changes on her face that indicated air density variations. She even observed the flight patterns of local birds to understand high-altitude wind currents. The aliens watched with growing fascination. Their targeting computers could process environmental data much faster than any biological brain, but they were beginning to understand that Lisa was using a completely different approach to the problem. "She is not calculating," observed Zexami the Silicoid. "She is experiencing the environment as a complete system." "Exactly," said Captain Foster. "Human snipers don't break down the shot into separate variables. They feel the entire situation as one integrated whole." Lisa made final adjustments to her scope and settled into her final shooting position. She controlled her breathing until her heart rate dropped to its minimum. Every muscle in her body relaxed except those needed to hold the rifle steady. The alien scientists watched their displays as sophisticated sensors measured every environmental variable. Computer models predicted where the bullet should strike based on the current conditions. But they had learned that human intuition could often exceed computational accuracy. Lisa fired. The bullet streaked across the alien landscape, fighting against gravity, wind, and atmospheric resistance. Advanced sensors tracked its path as it passed through different temperature layers and pressure zones. It struck the exact center of the target. The crowd of aliens fell silent. The monitoring equipment confirmed what their eyes had seen. A human had just achieved perfect accuracy at an impossible range for the second time. Remarkable, admitted Admiral Thurvok. But one additional success could still be explained by exceptional skill combined with favorable conditions. Crix the Draconian remained defiant. 2 lucky shots prove nothing. Consistent accuracy requires technological assistance. Lisa looked at Commander Sullivan again. She could see the importance of this moment reflected in his expression. The entire future relationship between humanity and the Galactic Coalition might depend on what happened next. "Sir," she said quietly, "I'm ready to fire again whenever the Admiral gives the order." The silence that followed Lisa's shot seemed to stretch on forever. Hundreds of alien soldiers from across the galaxy stood motionless, staring at the target display screens that showed the impossible result. A human using primitive technology had just achieved something that their most advanced weapons couldn't do. Zektar was the first to break the silence. His forearms moved frantically as he spoke rapidly in his native language. The translator struggled to keep up with his excited chatter. "This is impossible. The mathematical probability of achieving such accuracy at that range with kinetic projectiles is less than 0.3%, even under optimal conditions." Admiral Thurvok examined the target data on multiple display screens. He checked the sensor readings 3 times, looking for any sign of equipment malfunction or data error. But the numbers were consistent across all monitoring systems. The shot had struck the exact center of the target at 3,200 meters. "The shot is confirmed," he announced reluctantly. "Perfect center mass at maximum range." Commander Sullivan watched as groups of alien officers huddled together, speaking in rapid bursts in their native languages. Even with translation devices, he could pick up fragments of their conversations. Words like impossible, equipment malfunction, and human deception were being translated frequently. Some aliens examined their own equipment displays, wondering if their targeting computers had been giving them incorrect information. Others studied Lisa's rifle from a distance, trying to understand how such primitive technology could outperform their advanced systems. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward from the observation area. As the human scientific advisor, she understood both human capabilities and alien technology better than anyone else on the base. "If I may, Admiral," she said formally, "I think there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about human military capabilities." Admiral Thurvok turned his massive stone-like head toward her. "Explain." "You have all assumed that advanced technology automatically equals superior performance," Dr. Rodriguez said, addressing the crowd of alien officers. "But humans have spent thousands of years perfecting the art of projectile weapons. We didn't have targeting computers, so we developed something else." Velana's graceful head tilted in confusion. Her large eyes reflected genuine puzzlement. "But surely computational analysis is superior to organic intuition. How can biological processing compete with mathematical precision?" Lisa finally spoke up from her position near the firing line. She was still kneeling beside her rifle, performing the routine maintenance that every good soldier did after firing. "Ma'am, with respect, your computers are calculating what should happen based on programmed parameters. I'm reading what is actually happening." She gestured toward the range with one hand while continuing to clean her rifle with the other. "That thermal vent over there creates an updraft every 43 seconds. The atmospheric pressure changes slightly when the wind shifts direction from the mountains. Your targeting computer can't account for variables it doesn't know to look for." Captain Foster nodded as understanding dawned on him. "She's right. Human snipers don't just shoot at targets. They become part of the environment. They feel the shot before they take it. Crix the Draconian, who had been eliminated earlier in the competition, stepped forward with an aggressive posture. His red eyes glowed brighter and his scales darkened with anger. This is unacceptable. No primitive weapon should outperform modern military technology. But it just did, said Amy Chen quietly. She had been recording the entire competition for the Human Military Archives, and she made it look easy. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up holographic displays that showed the mathematical complexity of the shot Lisa had just made. The calculations filled the air with glowing numbers and trajectory curves. At 3,200 meters, a projectile fired from Sergeant Martinez's weapon experiences a drop of approximately 35 meters due to gravity alone, she explained. Wind resistance, atmospheric pressure, planetary rotation, and gravitational variations from the two moons all affect the trajectory. The margin for error is essentially zero. Zexmi, the crystalline silicoid, processed this information with his enhanced mathematical abilities, which is precisely why such a shot should be impossible without computer assistance. The number of variables exceeds the processing capacity of organic neural networks. That's where you're wrong, said Lisa, looking up from her rifle maintenance. I'm not processing all those variables separately. I'm feeling them as a complete system. She stood up and pointed to different areas around the range. I can feel the thermal currents from that power generator. I can sense the pressure changes when clouds pass overhead. I can detect wind shifts by watching grass movement at different distances. Your computers calculate each variable individually. I experience them all together. More aliens gathered around the group as word spread throughout the base. Scientists, engineers, and military officers from dozens of species came to see the human who had accomplished the impossible. A spider-like arachnoid named Click-Tar approached with curiosity rather than hostility. How do you develop such environmental sensitivity? Is this a genetic trait unique to humans? No, Captain Foster answered. It's learned through years of training and experience. Human snipers spend thousands of hours practicing in different environments. They learn to read weather patterns, atmospheric conditions, even the behavior of local wildlife. But why develop such primitive skills when technology can perform the same function more efficiently? Asked a Carillion engineer. Lisa smiled at the question. Because technology can fail. Batteries die. Computers malfunction. Sensors get damaged in combat. But a well-trained human sniper will always be able to make the shot as long as they have a rifle and ammunition. Admiral Thurvok had been listening to the conversation while studying the competition data. Sergeant Martinez, he said formally, you mentioned that this is not your longest confirmed kill. Please elaborate. Commander Sullivan checked his data pad and found Lisa's military record. Sergeant Martinez holds the record for the longest confirmed sniper kill in human military history. 3,200 meters, achieved during the Afghanistan conflict in 2019. The assembled aliens exchanged glances. Several began manipulating their own data devices, apparently cross-referencing human military records that had been shared when Earth joined the coalition. You have done this before? Asked Villana with amazement in her voice. Yes, ma'am. That was in combat conditions with an enemy soldier as the target. Today's shot was actually easier because I had time to study the environment and the target wasn't shooting back. The aliens began to understand that what they had witnessed wasn't a lucky accident or a single moment of extraordinary skill. It was a demonstration of capabilities that humans had been developing and refining for centuries. Zektar approached Lisa's rifle with scientific fascination. May I examine your weapon? I'm curious about the mechanical systems that enable such precision. Of course, Lisa said, making sure the rifle was completely safe before handing it over. But remember, the weapon is just a tool. The real precision comes from the person using it. As Zektar examined the rifle with his forearms, other aliens gathered around to see the primitive technology that had outperformed their most advanced systems. They were beginning to realize that they had seriously underestimated human military capabilities. The laughter had stopped. In its place was something far more valuable: respect for human ingenuity and the deadly precision that came from mastering a craft through dedication rather than relying on technology alone. Word about the shooting demonstration had spread throughout the coalition base faster than anyone expected. Aliens from dozens of species gathered around the range, creating the largest crowd that had ever assembled for a military training exercise. Many came expecting to see the limits of human overconfidence exposed. Others, particularly those who had been observing Lisa's previous shots, came with growing respect for what they might witness. Admiral Thurvok addressed the assembled crowd through the base-wide communication system. "We are conducting a scientific evaluation of human marksmanship capabilities. All personnel are welcome to observe but maintain appropriate distance from the firing line." The crowd included not just soldiers, but also scientists, engineers, diplomats, and even some civilian contractors who worked on the base. Representatives from the Coalition High Command had been notified and were watching through live video feeds from their headquarters on distant worlds. Lisa took her time setting up for the third shot. At 3,200 meters, every small detail could mean the difference between success and failure. She studied the environment with even greater care than before, looking for any changes that might affect her bullet's flight path. Captain Foster watched her through binoculars. "She's been in position for 15 minutes and hasn't even touched the trigger yet." "The human demonstrates remarkable patience," observed Keltar, a spider-like arachnoid whose species was known for their methodical approach to complex problems. "Most of our weapon systems would have fired within seconds of target acquisition." Dr. Rodriguez monitored the environmental sensors that were tracking conditions across the range. "Wind speed is variable between 3 and 7 kilometers per hour, shifting direction approximately every 90 seconds. Atmospheric pressure is stable, but there's a temperature inversion at 800 meters altitude that will affect the bullet's trajectory." Zexmai, the crystalline silicoid, processed this information with his enhanced mathematical abilities. "How can organic computation account for such complex variables? The number of calculations required exceeds the processing capacity of biological neural networks." "That's just it," explained Commander Sullivan. "She's not calculating each variable separately. Human snipers develop an intuitive understanding of how all these factors work together. They feel the shot rather than compute it." Lisa continued her preparation, but she wasn't just studying the current conditions. She was also predicting how they would change during the time her bullet would be in flight. At 3,200 meters, the projectile would take over 5 seconds to reach the target. During that time, wind patterns could shift, temperature layers could move, and atmospheric pressure could fluctuate. "Look at how she's watching those clouds," pointed out Amy Chen. "She's predicting how the shadow patterns will affect surface temperatures and create thermal currents." More. Aliens arrived as the crowd continued to grow. Engineers from the base's technical services came to see the primitive weapon that was outperforming their most advanced systems. Medical personnel came to study human physiology under extreme stress. Even maintenance workers abandoned their duties to witness what many considered impossible. Lisa made minute adjustments to her rifle scope. The Barrett had been designed for long-range shooting, but at 3,200 meters she was pushing it beyond its intended capabilities. She compensated for the rifle's known characteristics at extreme range, factoring in how the barrel would behave under stress and how the scope's optics would perform at maximum magnification. Admiral Thurvok checked the time display on his command station. "Sergeant Martinez has been in position for 22 minutes. Is additional preparation time required?" "Sir," Lisa responded without taking her eye away from the scope. "Human snipers take whatever time is necessary to ensure accuracy. Rushing a shot at this distance guarantees failure." The alien observers began to understand that patience was a crucial component of human marksmanship. Their advanced weapons could acquire targets and fire almost instantly, but Lisa was demonstrating that sometimes taking time to understand the environment was more important than fast target acquisition. She continued her analysis, reading the landscape like a complex book written in wind patterns, temperature variations, and atmospheric pressure changes. She noticed that a group of flying creatures had changed their flight pattern, indicating a shift in high-altitude air currents. She observed that heat waves from the base's power generation facility were creating updrafts that would affect her bullet's path. "Fascinating," commented Velana, whose species was renowned for their natural accuracy. "She is reading environmental conditions that our most sensitive instruments cannot detect." Dr. Rodriguez checked her monitoring equipment. "Actually, our sensors are detecting all the same variables, but they're presenting the data as separate measurements. Lisa is integrating everything into a complete environmental picture." 25 minutes after taking her position, Lisa began her final preparations. Her breathing slowed to almost nothing. Her heart rate dropped to its minimum sustainable level. Every muscle in her body relaxed except those needed to. Maintain her shooting position. The alien crowd watched in fascination as she entered what human snipers called the zone, a state of complete focus where conscious thought gave way to pure instinct. Her finger found the trigger and applied just enough pressure to take up the slack. "Environmental conditions are optimal," she announced quietly. Taking the shot, the Barrett rifle fired with its characteristic boom that echoed across the alien landscape. The bullet left the muzzle at over 800 meters per second, beginning its long journey through the atmosphere of Kepler 442b. Advanced sensors tracked the projectile's flight path as it passed through varying air densities and wind currents. Computer models showed its predicted impact point changing constantly as atmospheric conditions affected its trajectory. The bullet flew for what seemed like an eternity, fighting against gravity that tried to pull it down and wind, that tried to push it off course. It passed through thermal layers that the alien sensors had detected, but their targeting computers couldn't properly account for. Then it struck the target-perfect center mass again. The crowd of aliens fell completely silent. Even the background hum of the base's machinery seemed to fade as hundreds of beings from across the galaxy tried to process what they had just witnessed. 3 perfect shots at 3,200 meters. 3 consecutive demonstrations that human skill could exceed the capabilities of the most advanced military technology in known space. Admiral Thurvok was the first to break the silence. "Sergeant Martinez," he said formally, "the Galactic Defense Coalition acknowledges your exceptional marksmanship abilities." But Lisa wasn't finished. She looked up from her rifle and addressed the crowd directly. "Sir, with your permission, I'd like to attempt one more shot." The Admiral's stone-like features showed surprise. "Additional demonstration is unnecessary. Your capabilities have been established. Sir, I want to show that this isn't the limit of human abilities. The record shot I made on Earth was also at 3,200 meters, but it was achieved under combat conditions with an enemy target that was shooting back. Today's conditions are actually easier than what human snipers face in warfare." The crowd began murmuring excitedly. The demonstration had already exceeded everyone's expectations, but now the human was claiming she could perform even better under adverse conditions. Commander Sullivan stepped forward. "Admiral, if you'll permit it, Sergeant Martinez would like to demonstrate the full extent of human combat marksmanship capabilities." Admiral Thurvok considered the request. The demonstration had already provided valuable data about human military potential, but the opportunity to observe peak human performance under simulated combat conditions was too valuable to pass up. Permission granted. Establish combat simulation protocols. The combat simulation began immediately. Alien technicians activated stress protocols that would test Lisa's abilities under conditions similar to actual warfare. Simulated artillery sounds echoed across the range. Bright flashes, designed to disrupt vision, fired randomly around the shooting position. Even artificial smoke was released to obscure visibility and create additional atmospheric disturbance. Lisa remained calm despite the chaos erupting around her. She had experienced real combat many times, and these simulations couldn't match the intensity of actual warfare where enemy soldiers were actively trying to kill her. "Remarkable composure," observed Admiral Thurvok as he watched her maintain perfect shooting position despite the distractions. Most soldiers require extensive training to maintain accuracy under combat stress. Dr. Rodriguez monitored the physiological sensors that were tracking Lisa's vital signs. Her heart rate has actually decreased since the simulation began. She's more relaxed now than she was during the previous shots. The alien observers watched in amazement as Lisa ignored the explosions, flashes, and smoke that would have disrupted most soldiers' concentration. She continued her environmental analysis as if the combat simulation wasn't happening around her. "How is she maintaining focus?" asked Zektar, whose forearms were twitching nervously from the simulated combat sounds. Captain Foster smiled. "This is actually calmer than most of the situations where she's made long-range shots. During her record kill in Afghanistan, she was under enemy fire, while multiple artillery shells were exploding nearby." Lisa took her time despite the simulated combat conditions. She had learned during her military career that rushing a shot to escape danger usually resulted in missing the target completely. Better to take the time needed for accuracy, even under fire. The combat simulation increased in intensity. More explosions echoed across the range. Bright strobing lights tried to disrupt her vision. Speakers played recordings of battlefield communications and weapon fire to create auditory distractions. Through it all, Lisa remained perfectly still in her shooting position. She had entered the mental state that all expert snipers developed, a zone of complete focus where external distractions simply didn't exist. She has achieved total sensory isolation, observed a silicoid scientist who was studying her brain activity through non-invasive sensors. Despite the environmental chaos, her neural patterns show complete concentration on the shooting task. 30 minutes after the combat simulation began, Lisa was ready for her final shot. The conditions were more challenging than any of her previous attempts. Smoke obscured parts of her vision. Explosive concussions created unpredictable air currents. The strobing lights interfered with her ability to judge distances precisely, but she had faced worse conditions during actual combat. This was just another day at the office for a veteran sniper who had spent years perfecting her craft under the most demanding circumstances possible. "Taking the shot," she announced calmly. The Barrett rifle fired one final time. The bullet streaked through the smoke and chaotic air currents created by the combat simulation. It fought against every environmental factor that could affect its trajectory, including the additional disturbances created by the artificial combat conditions. The projectile struck the target dead center. Again, 4 perfect shots at 3,200 meters. 3 under normal conditions and 1 under simulated combat stress. Every shot had demonstrated that human skill could exceed the capabilities of advanced technology when properly applied. The combat simulation ended immediately. The explosions stopped, the lights shut off, and the smoke began to clear. In the sudden silence that followed, hundreds of alien beings stared at the target display that showed another perfect hit. Admiral Thurvok was the first to respond. "Sergeant Martinez," he said with unmistakable respect in his translated voice, "the Galactic Defense Coalition formally acknowledges that human military capabilities have been significantly underestimated." One by one, the alien officers approached Lisa to offer their respect and admiration. Zektar, who had mocked her primitive weapon at the beginning of the day, now studied it with scientific fascination. "Perhaps," he admitted, "there is wisdom in methods we have dismissed too quickly. Your weapon may be technologically primitive, but your application of it is remarkably sophisticated." Velana bowed gracefully, which was a significant gesture of respect among her people. "Among the Altarians we have a saying, the most sophisticated technology is worthless without the skill to wield it. Today we have learned that sometimes the reverse is also true. The greatest skill can make any technology formidable." Crix the Draconian, who had been most aggressive in challenging Lisa's abilities, approached with obvious reluctance. His scales had returned to their normal coloration, indicating that his emotional stress had decreased. "Human," he said gruffly, "I owe you an apology. I underestimated both you and your species. Your performance today has been educational." Lisa nodded acknowledgement as she began the familiar routine of cleaning her rifle. "No offense taken, sir, but you might want to remember this the next time you're tempted to judge someone by their equipment instead of their skill." Commander Sullivan felt a surge of pride as he watched alien officers treat his soldier with newfound respect. The demonstration had achieved more than just proving Lisa's individual abilities. It had forced the entire galaxy to reconsider their assumptions about human military potential. Dr. Rodriguez approached with a data pad full of readings from the shooting session. "Sergeant, the Coalition's Military Research Division would like to study your techniques. They're particularly interested in how human intuition can complement advanced targeting systems." "Of course, ma'am. But I should mention that I'm not unique among human snipers. Back on Earth, there are hundreds of marksmen with similar capabilities. We've had to develop these skills because we didn't have the luxury of advanced technology." This comment caught Admiral Thurvok's attention immediately. "You are saying that other humans possess comparable abilities?" "Yes, sir. Some are even better than me. The human military has been perfecting these techniques for centuries. We've had to rely on skill and experience because our technology was limited." The alien officers began talking among themselves in excited bursts. The implications were staggering. If one human could achieve such results, What could an entire army of trained human snipers accomplish? As the crowd began to disperse, many aliens lingered to examine Lisa's Barrett rifle and ask questions about human marksmanship techniques. What had begun as mockery had transformed into genuine scientific curiosity and military respect. Amy Chen recorded the final moments of the demonstration for the human military archives. "This is going to change everything," she said to Captain Foster. "The entire galaxy just learned that humans aren't the primitive species they thought we were." Captain Foster nodded as he watched alien engineers examining Lisa's rifle with scientific fascination. "The laughing has definitely stopped. I think we're going to be getting a lot more respect from our coalition partners from now on." Admiral Thurvok approached Commander Sullivan as the demonstration concluded. "Commander, we need to discuss revising our assessment of human military capabilities. This demonstration suggests that Earth's forces may be more valuable to the coalition than we initially estimated." "I would welcome that discussion, Admiral. Humans have many capabilities that might not be obvious to species with more advanced technology." As the alien officers departed, many were already discussing how human marksmanship techniques might be integrated into coalition training programs. The primitive weapons and ancient skills had proven their worth against the most sophisticated military technology in the galaxy. Lisa shouldered her rifle and prepared to leave the range. The weapon that had drawn laughter and mockery that morning was now being viewed with respect and admiration. She had proven that sometimes the old ways were still the best ways, and that human determination could triumph over any technological advantage. The woman with the Barrett had made her point, 3,200 meters at a time. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again.